Have you ever noticed how much of your inner struggle comes from this need to control everything? I'm not just talking about controlling your job, your finances, or your routines. I'm talking about the deeper, more exhausting obsession with trying to control what can't be controlled, your future, your identity, your path forward. That overwhelming hunger for certainty, the demand to have answers to questions that life was never designed to answer. We've been taught to believe that clarity equals security, that knowing exactly who we are and what's coming next will bring us peace. But has it, or has this obsession only pushed peace further out of reach? Maybe you're tired. Tired of trying to predict every twist and turn, tired of sketching out perfect plans that collapse the moment life throws something unexpected your way. Maybe you're living in that anxious in-between where every unknown feels like a threat, every uncertainty like something to conquer. But what if uncertainty isn't the problem? What if the real source of your suffering is your refusal to accept it? Centuries ago, a French philosopher named Michel de Montaigne understood this long before the modern world caught up. In a time when people craved absolute truths and rigid systems to make sense of life, he did something revolutionary. He turned inward. Instead of searching for answers out there, he examined his own fears, his contradictions, his confusions. And he wrote about it all, not as a man claiming to hold the answers, but as someone learning to live with the questions. That's what I want to offer you here, not certainty, but a different relationship with uncertainty. A lighter, braver way of moving through life. Through Montaigne's wisdom, you'll see that when you stop fighting the unknown, something profound begins to shift. Anxiety loosens its grip. The pressure eases. And for the first time in a long time, life starts to feel simpler. But don't mistake this simplicity for something external. It's not the world changing, it's you. It's an inner revolution, and it starts the moment you let go. The moment you step away from the exhausting illusion of control and open yourself up to a new way of being. Are you ready? Because this journey doesn't lead to more answers. It leads to a freedom you've likely forgotten how to feel. And it starts with a simple, terrifyingly honest phrase. I don't know. And that's okay. Montaigne wasn't the kind of philosopher who stood on stages or tried to bend the world into tidy theories. He didn't build complex systems or preach from a pulpit. He sat in his library surrounded by books and silence, and turned his attention to the most unpredictable, mysterious object he could study himself. His writings weren't meant to convert anyone or to offer solutions. They were meant to reflect, to hold up a mirror so others could see themselves more clearly. He didn't write to convince. He wrote to invite doubt, curiosity, self-reflection, to remind us that it's okay not to have all the answers. Unlike so many thinkers of his time and of ours, Montaigne didn't chase universal truths. He embraced the opposite. The older he got, the more he understood that not knowing wasn't a failure. It was a kind of wisdom. His famous question, "What do I know?" wasn't sarcasm. It was the foundation of everything he believed. Admitting ignorance wasn't shameful to him. It was freeing. It was permission to stop pretending, to stop clinging to masks of certainty, to finally breathe without the weight of having to be right, perfect, complete. But the modern world doesn't reward this kind of humility. We live in a culture obsessed with opinions, with having a stance on everything. Certainties are worn like armor. We're expected to be unshakable, unwavering, sure of ourselves at all times. Montaigne offers something radically different, the opportunity to be human first, before ideological. He believed our doubts, our contradictions, our fragility weren't flaws to fix. They were what made us fully alive. And maybe that's exactly what you need to hear right now. That you don't have to perform certainty to be worthy. That you don't need to know everything to move forward. that it's okay to be incomplete. Montaigne gave himself permission to change his mind, to contradict himself, to outgrow his own ideas. He understood that the mind is meant to shift, adapt, evolve. And instead of resisting that natural flow, he embraced it with humor, with tenderness, with curiosity. For him, life wasn't about mastering the world through rigid beliefs. It was about navigating it with an open heart, with an awareness that being wrong is often the first step to becoming wiser. That's why Montaigne still matters today. In an age where everyone is shouting, he teaches us the quiet strength of doubt. In a time obsessed with certainties, he reminds us of the courage it takes to live without them. And if you're feeling lost, crushed under the weight of needing to have everything figured out, maybe what you're missing isn't direction. Maybe it's freedom. The freedom to change, to not know, to simply be. But Montaigne didn't just champion doubt for doubt's sake. He warned us of the cost of running from it. Because the more we try to control life, the more we suffer. That's what we're going to explore next, the silent suffering that comes from trying to hold on too tightly to what was never ours to control. Look at yourself honestly. How often are you trying to control things that aren't yours to control tomorrow's outcomes? Other people's reactions, your career trajectory, your body, even your emotions. The more you grip the reins of life, the more it slips through your fingers. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. Have you noticed how much this costs you? This obsession with control isn't just exhausting. It's corrosive. It chains you to impossible expectations. It turns you into a watchdog constantly scanning for what might go wrong. And there's a name for this anxiety. At its core, anxiety is fear of the unknown. It's the desperate hunger for guarantees in a world that offers none. Most people live like this, on high alert, trying to anticipate every curve in the road, convinced that enough preparation will keep their hearts from breaking. But Montaigne understood something that modern psychology has only recently begun to validate. Living in a state of constant prediction is a war against reality. Human suffering doesn't just come from what happens to us. Often it comes from our refusal to accept what happens, from wishing life were different, from denying the natural flow of things. Montaigne wrote about this with startling honesty. He didn't fight his pain, his losses, his uncertainties. He accepted them as part of being alive. And by doing so, he freed himself from the exhausting battle of resistance. Think about it. The people most obsessed with control are often the most anxious, the most rigid, the most exhausted. They can't relax because they believe that vigilance is protection. But it isn't. It's imprisonment. Montaigne offered another way, not resignation, but conscious surrender. Not giving up, but recognizing that the world isn't ours to command, and our minds aren't meant to dominate every outcome. He taught us to flow, not to fight. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control, the more frustrated you become. The more frustrated you are, the more you try to control. It's a vicious cycle that swallows you whole. And where does it leave you? With a tense body, a restless mind, and a heart far from peace. Montaigne points us toward a different path. Living well isn't about controlling everything. It's about learning to coexist with the things you can't control. But how do you do that practically? How do you face the unknown without losing yourself in it? The answer lies in Montaigne's approach to life, the practice of self-reflection. Not as cold analysis, but as a ritual of honest inner listening. While the world screamed for certainty, Montaigne withdrew into silence to observe what was stirring inside himself. And what he found wasn't clarity wrapped up in a neat little bow. It was chaos. Contradictions, fears, desires, pulling in different directions, strange impulses he couldn't explain. All the things we're taught to hide, he chose to face head-on. But not as a judge, as a witness. Montaigne's genius wasn't in inventing grand theories about human behavior. It was in having the courage to make himself the experiment, to turn his own life into the study. His essays aren't manifestos. They're mirrors. He wrote not to instruct, but to share, to think aloud and invite the reader into that process. He wasn't trying to shape minds. He was offering a way to set them free by writing openly about his doubts, his contradictions, his weaknesses. Montaigne reveals something revolutionary. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be honest with yourself. This practice of raw self-observation, without filters, without masks, is one of the deepest forms of self-knowledge there is. But let's be clear. Self-observation isn't about tearing yourself apart with criticism. It's about learning to look inward with compassion, to notice when you're lying to yourself, when you're pretending to know things you don't, when you're forcing yourself into an image that no longer fits. Montaigne wrote to free himself from these traps. He said, "I am human, and nothing human is alien to me." In other words, there's nothing inside you, no confusion, no fear, no contradiction, that disqualifies you from being fully, beautifully human. And here's the power of this practice. It dissolves shame. The more sincerely you look at yourself, the more you realize how much of your suffering comes from trying to live up to an impossible ideal. An image of emotional, intellectual, or moral perfection that doesn't exist. Montaigne reminds us we're not marble statues. We're living, changing beings, messy, flawed, and full of potential. The simplicity we crave begins when we stop fighting who we are. But don't confuse this acceptance with passivity. On the contrary, it's the foundation of any real growth. Only those who see themselves clearly can change authentically. Only those who embrace their shadow can walk toward light. And yet, even if you learn to observe yourself with honesty, there's still another truth: to face change is inevitable. In you, in others, in the world, nothing stands still. And until we understand this, until we make peace with it, suffering will keep knocking at our door. Most people live as if life should follow a straight line, as if stability, success, or self-knowledge will eventually deliver us to a place where change stops, where emotions stabilize, where doubt disappears, where everything makes perfect sense. But this is a fantasy, one sold by religion, education, self-help gurus, even corporate culture. And it's this fantasy that distances us from reality and from peace. Montaigne saw this clearly. He understood that everything pulses in a state of flow. Thoughts evolve, bodies age, people come and go, desires shift, certainties dissolve. Nothing is fixed, nothing is guaranteed, nothing is final. Trying to live as though life should be predictable and stable is laying the groundwork for frustration, heartache, and collapse. Change isn't an accident. It's the essence of existence. And the more we resist it, the more bitter, rigid, and disconnected we become. Montaigne accepted his own changes as part of being alive. He knew inconsistency wasn't weakness, but growth. That changing your mind wasn't failure, but courage. That letting go of one belief, even in favor of another equally uncertain, was a step toward deeper understanding. He wrote provocatively, "Constancy is the virtue of mechanical minds." For him, living well wasn't about clinging to a static identity, but learning to dance with impermanence. Think about how many of your fears are tied to change. Fear of losing someone, fear of losing your job, fear of things shifting beneath your feet. But what if instead of resisting change, you welcomed it? What if you stopped viewing transitions as failures and started seeing them as evolution? Accepting change isn't giving up. It's ceasing the fight against reality's current. It's learning to surf the waves instead of trying to hold back the sea. The lightness we long for doesn't come from artificial stability. It comes from inner flexibility, from the ability to let go, to adapt, to be reborn again and again. Montaigne grasped this truth centuries ahead of his time. And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to grasp it now. But recognizing change as natural doesn't solve everything. You still have to face the inner work. How do you maintain your center in the midst of so much uncertainty? How do you stay sane amid doubt, chaos, and the unknown? This is where philosophy becomes practice, where Montaigne offers not just reflection, but tools, mental habits, internal rituals that help us live with the unpredictable. Because philosophy is useless if it doesn't touch real life. Montaigne knew that. His writings aren't ivory tower theories. They're practical meditations on fear, sadness, insecurity, aging, mortality. He wasn't writing to impress intellectuals. He was writing to survive, to learn how to live with more courage, less fear, to make peace with life's inherent instability. But how do we actually do this? How do we live with uncertainty? It's not a one-time choice. It's a practice, a re-education of the mind. It takes discipline, not the rigid, punishing kind, but a softer, more committed discipline, a discipline of devotion to your own freedom. Because learning to live well with uncertainty is a daily effort. Here are a few of Montaigne's principles that can genuinely reshape how you move through life. First, question your certainties. Whenever you feel absolutely sure of something, pause. Reflect. Examine. Absolute certainty is often just fear in disguise, a shield against the discomfort of doubt. Montaigne doubted even his own thoughts, not out of insecurity, but out of wisdom. He knew the most dangerous beliefs are the ones we refuse to question. Second, make self-inquiry a habit. Write, journal. It doesn't matter if it's a diary, a letter you'll never send, or a messy note. Putting your thoughts into words helps untangle them. Montaigne filled page after page, not for vanity, but to bring order to his inner chaos, to make his mind a more habitable place. Third, treat impermanence as a principle of life. Make plans, sure, but hold them lightly. Life will change. It always does. Flexibility is strength. Instead of clinging to fragile certainties, learn to pivot, to adapt, to reinvent. Montaigne believed the wisest person is the one who knows how to change with the changing world. Fourth, find humor in your own fragility. Laugh at yourself. Montaigne didn't take himself too seriously. That's why he saw so deeply. He laughed at his inconsistencies, teased his fears, made light of his vanity. Humor keeps us from being crushed by our own expectations. It reminds us we're human. And that's okay. Finally, create space for silence. Moments alone without distraction. No phone, no noise. Just you. Montaigne valued solitude not as isolation, but as clarity. In silence, you hear your real thoughts. In stillness, your mind recalibrates. And in that quiet space, uncertainty stops being a threat. It becomes fertile ground for something new. All of this leads to one thing: freedom. The freedom to be yourself without having all the answers. The freedom to move lightly even when the future is unclear. The freedom to belong to yourself completely. And this is where everything we've talked about so far comes together. Because Montaigne didn't want you to simply survive the chaos of life. He wanted you to learn how to dance with it, to stop gripping so tightly that your hands bleed, to stop demanding life make sense before you allow yourself to live it. to stop thinking peace is waiting for you at the finish line, when in truth, it's already within you, if only you'd stop trying so hard to control what was never yours to begin with. Look around. Everything you've tried so hard to hold on to: stability, relationships, your body, your plans. None of it was ever really under your command. Life isn't a spreadsheet of certainties. It doesn't follow your rules or your timelines. People will let you down. Plans will unravel. Feelings will shift. None of this is a failure. It's just reality unfolding, doing what it has always done. Changing, evolving, moving forward with or without your permission. Montaigne saw this with piercing clarity. He understood that suffering doesn't come from change itself. It comes from our resistance to change, from the belief that life should be fixed, predictable, tame. But life isn't meant to be contained. It's meant to be experienced. It's not a form to be preserved, but a flow to be joined. And the moment you stop fighting, that something shifts. Not out there in the world, but inside you. Your rigidity begins to soften. Your anxiety starts to loosen its grip. You stop pushing so hard against what is and begin to move with it instead. This isn't resignation. It's wisdom. It's maturity. It's freedom, and the freedom to live without the crushing expectation that you must have all the answers. The freedom to feel without having to label every emotion. The freedom to face uncertainty without needing to wrestle it into submission. Life doesn't ask for your perfection. It asks for your presence. That simplicity you've been searching for isn't out there. It's not hidden in the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the flawless routine. It's not waiting for you in some fully planned out future where nothing ever goes wrong. It's already here in this moment, in your willingness to say, I don't know. And that's okay. Because in that space of surrender, real peace is born, not the fragile peace that crumbles under pressure, but the quiet, steady peace that comes from within. Montaigne taught us something timeless. When we accept our ignorance, we become more human and more free. If you've stayed with me this far, if these words have landed somewhere deep within you, it's because there's already a part of you that's ready to let go, ready to loosen your grip, ready to breathe a little easier, ready to live a little lighter. So ask yourself, what part of you is still holding on? What fear keeps you clinging to the illusion of certainty when you look toward the future and see nothing clear ahead? What rises up inside you? Fear, resistance, sadness, or maybe a quiet, unfamiliar kind of relief. The relief of realizing you don't have to know. You never did. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me how this reflection resonates with you. I read every comment carefully because this conversation matters. Not just for you, but for everyone who finds a piece of themselves in your words. This exchange, this honesty, it's how we remind each other we're not alone in this struggle. And if this journey has made sense to you, if it's helped you see things differently, don't stop here. Keep going. There's more ahead. The next video will take us deeper into these ideas, deeper into the art of letting go and finding peace, not in answers, but in the questions themselves. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because this path you've started walking, it's yours now. Keep walking, keep questioning, keep living. Because this isn't about arriving, it's about learning how to be alive along the way.